Hi, this is Beth from Around the Table Yarns in Shaker Heights, Ohio. Today is the second session of our sweater club for the second half of 2025. We are working on the baseline cardigan by Susanne Sommer, or So Sue Knits. This is a for purchase pattern, so we will not be showing a lot of details of the pattern on this video because you need to purchase it to be able to see everything that the people who are doing this project with us can see. So if you'll hang on one second, I will switch to the view of the project. In part one, we cast on provisionally with a crochet hook and started the back side. This is the back side of our project and worked out with some increasing to the beginning of the shoulder. And we put those stitches on hold. And then we cast on again provisionally with a crochet hook and worked increases either lower down for a V-neck or a little bit higher up for a round neck or up closer to the top for a crew neck. I talked to somebody today who did the V-neck, and she felt that these stitches along the edge were very tight. And so that was something that was a little bit of a concern for her. Um, she felt that they were too tight. And one of the things was that she was using a non-woolen yarn, so there was not a lot of extra stretch in her edging. And also she maybe was doing a technique for her increases because in the V-neck you increase on every row. I think you might need to play around a little bit to make sure that you're getting enough stretch in the edge. One of the options for getting extra stretch in an edge like this is to do a yarn over on one pass of the edge between the edge stitch and the next stitch, just do a yarn over. And when you come back, just drop the yarn over so that you have extra stitches or extra yarn along the edge of the neckline in that kind of a diagonal place. It is picked up and it's underneath a ribbing, so it will not be visible later. So even if it makes sort of a looser or not as tidy looking of an edge, giving yourself lots of extra um, yarn at the neck edge will make it a more comfortable knit, I think. So I just wanted to bring that up because that was brought up in the class, and I'm not doing the V-neck, so I hadn't experienced that. But she said she re-knit the V-neck several times because she just wasn't satisfied with how it was coming out. And I suggested that maybe she would be more satisfied with the increases for the V-neck on one side. So as you're going this way, it's just a knit front and back, and going this way, it was a right lifted increase. And potentially you could just do another knit front and back, or you could do a yarn over increase, just a yarn around the needle, kind of an increase to make it a little bit looser. So there are different options we could maybe play with if the neckline seems too tight. That was just a little aside from this morning's class. When you have joined your two pieces, it is on a main color row, which if you're doing it in one color is every row, but when you're doing it in two colors, you join on a main color row. So you work across the row and then you cast on with a cable cast on the number of stitches for your crew neck, V-neck, or round neck, and then you continue that same row across the back, and then the pieces are joined and you continue working out. So that is the beginning of section 3, and that's where I want to kind of refer back to. Section 3 is on a different page depending on which printout of the pattern you have. On mine it is on page 7. And I just want to go over a couple of things from section 3. So I want to just highlight this part of section 3. And these are the directions that are given for this part, this section, working from the neckline towards the shoulder. So lift up my thing. So this is my neckline. I'm working towards the shoulder point, and I have the slip stitch of my main color that is the center of, of the two sides. So I just want to show, we talked about how that was set up in the last Zoom. And once that's done, so the setup is done. For me, it was done with my main color, which in my case is pink. So setup rows 1 and 2 were pink rows. And they were just the way of joining here. And then you worked back. The wrong side, you just worked back with one decrease right after the marker. And it was a purl two together. So that actually sets up this stitch. The purl two together sets up the center stitch. And then you will have, depending on your length, you'll have one of these stitch counts. And then you continue with the pattern. There's an 8-row pattern that is listed here. And I just want to point out that rows 1 and 2 are in the contrast color. Rows 3 and 4 are in the main color. Rows 5 and 6 are in the contrast color. Rows 7 and 8 are in the main color. So I would go ahead and write in your color names alongside of that. The other thing I want to point out is that on this row, it sets up, this is a wrong side row, and it sets up this stitch. In this row, that stitch is slipped. So there's just one slip stitch right here. So you knit to the marker, you slip the marker, and then you slip one with the yarn in back. That's because you're on a right side row, so you're slipping one with the yarn held to the wrong side of the work. And then you knit to the last stitch and you do the same slip one with yarn in front that you've been doing all along. On the wrong side row, you have to work to one stitch before the marker and slip one with yarn in front. Let me just point out that as you are slipping one with yarn in front, that will feel like you're purling the stitch. You have to move the yarn to the front between the needles to slip one with yarn in front, and then you have to move it back after you slip the marker to knit to the last stitch. So row 2, it's going to feel like there's a purl stitch when you slip that stitch. So I'm just underlining here where in the pattern there's going to be something to pay attention to. In row 3, I'm using my main color again, and I've highlighted that because I knit all of the stitches. In other words, in my row 3, I start that slip stitch again. So it's only slipped for 2 ridges or 3 rows. And then you start it again with a new knit stitch, and then you slip it for 3 rows or 2 more ridges, and then you start it again. That's why this stitch is not elongated all the way to the end. We wouldn't want to do that. That would create puckering. So you only want to stretch it out for a couple of rows or a couple of ridges. So in row 3, that's where you restart the slip stitch for the first time, and then you work back and again slip one with yarn in front. That's going to feel like you're doing a purl stitch. And then you do the same, slip one with yarn in back on the knit side, slip one with yarn in front on the purl side with your contrast color. When you get to row 7, here's where something happens that's different. You work to 2 stitches before the marker and do a directional decrease. So you do an SSK, slip the marker, knit 1, and then you do a knit 2 together. The knit 1 is the stitch we've been slipping. So this is us restarting that slip stitch again. And there's also a decrease. So there are 2 decreases, 2 stitches minus 2 in row 7. This whole section, there's just 2 stitches decreased each time, and then you work back in row 8. Depending on your size, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, all the way through 8.5, you will repeat these rows, these 1 through 8 rows, a set number of times. So you'll look up at the chart on the top corner up here, and it will tell you how many times more to repeat these 8 rows. So you've done it once, and the number in the top right-hand corner is how many more times. So if the number is 5, you've done it once, you're going to do it 5 more times, or a total of 6 repeats. On the side, it tells you here for your size how many times to continue after you've completed the chart. And then here it tells you, so this little chart gives you the total number of garter ridges from the original cast-on. So that's from our provisional cast-ons. So for example, and it gives it to you for your size, whether it's the front or the back. So you would count from the provisional cast-on. So I'm looking at my right side. Here's my provisional cast-on, and I'm looking at each of these ridges. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I'm counting the pink ones as even numbers. 14, 16, 18, 22, 4, 6, 8, 32, 4, 6, 8, 42, 4, 5. And that is correct. I'm supposed to have 45 ridges from start to finish. So I was in the correct place when I stopped there, and I counted here, and I was in the correct place as well. That's 49 ridges. So this is something you want to double check that you have the correct number of ridges, and that number is given on my page 7 in the section 3 in the bottom right-hand corner. The next page is a page of charts. This is page 8. Lots and lots of numbers here. Only a couple of them relate to each person's project. So the first one is the total number of stitches. If you have done your increases correctly and you have done your decreases correctly, the total number of stitches that you end up with in this row should be matching to this chart at the top of my page 8. So this is the chart. The next chart is the stitches after side chart in section 3 of the pattern. And this refers to your total number of stitches. If my camera would like to focus on that, that would be awesome. So total number of stitches, oh, for crying in the night, in your pattern. So this chart refers to your total number of stitches. And for example, here's my size that I've circled. That number should be the number of stitches on my front and my back plus 1, plus the center stitch. And I double checked, and it is. So if that number is different, you need to make a note of that. You might need to go back. You might need to do more decreases. There may be something that's gone on with your thing, but it should come out so that that number matches the total number you have on your needles. The second thing that is on that page at the bottom are the side seam stitches for the crew neck and the round neck. And I told somebody today, go ahead and cross off the pattern that you are not doing. So let's just do that. I'm doing the crew neck, the top one. I don't need this chart. So just cross off. So you don't even have to look at that chart. And then find your length. I'm doing length A, and find your size. I'm doing size 2.5. That is the only number on this whole thing that matters to you. So find your number, and you don't have to look at the whole thing. At the bottom of the page, it's the same thing again. So if you're doing the crew neck, you don't have to look at the bottom chart. If you're doing the round or the V-neck, you don't have to look at the top chart. Cross off the chart that you're not using. Find your size and your length and circle that number. This is the side seam number that you should have. So mine is actually 34. And now we're ready to go on to join the two sides. I know that this is not in focus, but That's okay because we're not supposed to be showing this pattern on the on the camera anyway. So we're beginning with the right side seam. And the right side seam is this seam down the side of the sweater. So on my project, that is how are we going to join this side to be the side of a sweater? And the first thing is you need to know that you have all the correct stitches on here. So the first thing I want you to do is what we've just discussed, check that you have the correct total number of stitches. The second step that I want you to consider doing for this is to measure your bicep. So where this sweater comes on your body, I'm just going to hold it up in front of my body, but where it comes on my body is to this part of my arm, which is pretty much the meaty part of my bicep. So take a measuring tape and check your bicep measurement at that point. So you're just going to wrap it around the meatiest part, maybe make a muscle. And I'm just laying it up there. I'm not taking a really perfect measurement, but I just want to see that my bicep is about 12 and a half inches. So I want to go back on the sizing chart and double check if my bicep measurement is going to work for the size that I'm doing. And that is on page 2. It's in the finished measurements section. So I want you to go back to the finished measurements section of the chart. So this is what that page looks like with the schematic at the top. And the sleeve, upper sleeve circumference is the second measurement, measurement capital B. And for my size, that should be 12 and a half inches, and it is. But my bicep is actually exactly 12 and a half inches. So if I make my sleeve 12 and a half inches, it will be very snug, and I won't be able to wear very much underneath it. So I am going to alter my pattern and do the size 3 sleeve measurement. So if your upper sleeve measurement, if your bicep measurement is the same or greater than the measurement that refers to your size, the measurement for your size, then you may want to choose a larger size. If your bicep measurement is much smaller, you could potentially choose your exact size or a smaller one. And the reason is it is this measurement here, this B. So if you're looking at the line, this is the upper sleeve measurement or your bicep measurement. And this is just a row of stitches. So I can pick if I want to be up here or if I want to make it a little bit deeper. It doesn't change the number of stitches. It just changes how many of them I make for my sleeve. So it will still fall to the same length that you've chosen. It's just how deep is your sleeve opening going to be in relationship to your own measurement of your bicep. Does that make sense for everybody? I hope it does. So if that's the case, going back to our section 3, part 17, you can customize then. So I'm going to do for mine. So I'm on this page that's the section 4 right side seam. So I am going to customize mine. And instead of choosing the number of stitches that would have been for my size, which is 2.5, I'm going to have a few more. And that's here. So you can see I actually circled the slightly bigger size. So I'm going to have 30 stitches. I'm going to have fewer stitches on my side seam and a few more stitches on my sleeve because I want to make room for my big burly muscles. So that's that step of it, you're going to check the measurement of the bicep and then you're going to check it against the sleeve sizes and you're going to pick the size. It's either the size you started with or one bigger or one smaller, however you do it. And then we're going to go to the next part of this. And I just want to go through this again, the same. Her instructions are very clear, but they are not in the order that I would necessarily give them. She says to knit to so many stitches before the marker for your sleeve circumference for your size. And then place the following number of stitches on a piece of waste yarn to hold, and then slide the remaining stitches now onto a cable on hold, and then turn the work um, to work on the number of stitches that we have here. So just to clarify, the number of stitches here that are going to become your sleeve are going to be the one in the middle and then equal numbers going out from the middle. And then the end of your row, the two ends of your row are going to be equal number of stitches to be the side seam. So I can draw that and it would look something. I love having a piece of paper like this. Here's all my stitches. Here's the center stitch. My sleeve stitches are going to be X. And on one side, the front of my sweater and the back of my sweater, I'm going to have equal numbers. It's going to be X and X. And my side seam stitches are going to be Y, and they're going to be equal numbers. So 2X plus 2Y plus 1 equals the total number of my stitches, where Y is my side seams and X is my sleeve. So I know that sounds like math, but I just want to point out that these number of stitches should be the same. So there's one here, it should be 30 and 30 or 26 and 26 or whatever it's supposed to be for your sleeve. Those numbers should be evenly divided with the center stitch. And then the two sides should have the same number of stitches. So this is the end of my row on both sides. There should be the same number of stitches because we're going to join these stitches to each other and these are going to become the sleeve. So in the pattern, it says to work to this point. So I worked across to this point. This is where my side stitches ended. And then you were supposed to put all of these stitches on a holder and then put these on the cable. And I just left them and continued working on here. So I have done, so you turn and you work back and you're just working on the side stitches that are attached to your back. And you make a little flap. For the smaller sizes, you make a flap that is 6 ridges, and for the larger sizes, you make a flap that is 10 ridges. So all I've done is follow the instructions below that setup to make this flap. I found something I missed, which is why you have to read your pattern carefully. At the bottom of this section, it tells you how many times to repeat section to rows 1 and 2 to create the number of ridges that you need here in your underarm section. And then it tells you to repeat row 1, which is the right side row, once more. So that puts me on the next color. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and just demonstrate. So I use the other needle and I'm just going to knit up to the armhole. Put all my stitches back on, backwards or forwards. So I'm just going to knit up to the armhole and I'm going to cut this color. and then we're going to graft it coming from the armhole down to the hem. So I apologize, you do not finish with both yarns at the hem. You finish with the yarn that I believe the yarn that you started with, the color that you started with. So in this case, it's my main color. You knit it up to the armhole section. And then, so previously I did nothing with my other side. So I need to graft these stitches to these stitches. So I need to do a little maneuvering to get that to work. So I'm going to go ahead and slide my sleeve stitches onto the stitch holder. So I have a marker here where the other side of my sleeve stitches are supposed to be. And so I'm going to just slide all of those onto a stitch holder. So now this could also be a piece of waste yarn that you use a darning needle. There's my marker, there's my end. Now my other stitches are accessible. Y'all watch me do that. Drop those stitches right off. Go through, go through. Okay. Now my sleeve stitches are secure for the time being. We're not going to come back to them until we've finished the other side. So bye-bye sleeve stitches. And with my wrong sides together and my, okay, so right sides are facing me. The tab that I just did is on the bottom. My needles are pointing to the right and not being interfered with. I'm going to use my main color. I'm going to cut a nice long piece of my main color and thread that onto my darning needle.
Beth, do you make a tab on the other side also, or just the one side?
Just the one side.
Okay.
So you only have to join it, you only have to attach and join on one side. So you do the whole length of the underarm stitches on
Mm-hmm.
one side and then graft it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I
So
just wonder
it's
if I had.
elegant. I think it's an elegant way to do this. I think for those of us who like symmetry, we would have done it on both sides and then joined it in the center. But
Mm-hmm.
because it's a graft, it doesn't need to be. If you were going to do the 3 needle bind off,
Mm-hmm.
then your 3 needle bind off would be asymmetrically along this row.
Mm-hmm.
That would bug me.
Okay.
That would make me do extra, like half as many on this side and then the other half over here and then do the 3 needle bind off. Okay, so now we are set up to do the correct garter stitch grafting. I have the same number of stitches. The stitches on my back needle are the main color. The stitches on my the needle that we just prepared are in the other color, so that is correct. And what we're going to do here is go purlwise and leave on and pull through, purlwise and leave on and pull through, knitwise and off. Whoop. purlwise and leave on, knitwise and off, purlwise and leave on, keep staying underneath, knit and purl, knit and purl. So the difference between this and regular stockinette grafting is that you do the same sequence for both, because in stockinette grafting, you've got the two right sides. I don't know how to describe this exactly, but it makes sense when you're doing it. So you're creating a row of garter. And I think it's so cool. So knit and purl, go in knitwise and come out purl, or come into the next one purlwise and leave on. And that creates a garter row that matches and goes down along. So my tension on this is a little bit wonky. My pearls are maybe getting pulled too tight. So I want to practice that a little bit. You may want to try this on a piece of practice knitting, but that is going to create a nice edge with no and purl. So I'm not going to pull quite so firmly. Knit. I want to go into that back stitch purlwise, and I have to go into it knitwise. So I'm not pulling quite as tight on that. I think that will help keep my purl stitches looking a little bit more perky. Yep. Boop, boop. Knitwise and off, purlwise and leave on. And now you can see that looks much more like a purl and a garter stitch center. So I pulled a little bit too tight on the first three, but now I'm loosening up a little bit and it's got a similar tension and it's going to look like a row of garter in between there. So that's how we're going to join it. So that gives us this nice edge. This side will be finished for the moment. And for the next time, what we're going to do is we're going to pick up, we're going to unzip and pick up these stitches. So actually, I'm going to pause and I'll show that. So the next step, the next section of the pattern, section 5, is the left back. And they want you to unravel the provisional cast on and place those stitches back onto the needles and then continue with the neckline shaping. And then you're going to cast on, again, provisionally, the left front and join them and get to the same place. So the only thing that's different about this side is unraveling our provisional cast on stitches. And I just want to show how I'm going to do that. So I put these stitches onto waste yarn and I did a crochet cast on. So I have some extra stitches here. I knotted the end where I was going to unravel from. So I'm going to unknot that end and I'm going to just start to pull gently. Whoop. A little. And I'm just going to pull these out of my stitches. And I'm going to put my needle in as I go. So I'm going to catch these stitches live as I'm pulling out. So I want to go into the stitch that I'm going to go into that stitch, whoop, purlwise, each stitch, purlwise, purlwise, purlwise. And you'll do this for the whole thing, and then you'll be able to rejoin with the opposite color, the other color, So this is how easy that crocheted cast on makes it for picking up the stitches and continuing your work. Just keep popping them out. So I wouldn't unzip them and then pick them up unless I was using a much smaller needle. I like to unzip them one stitch at a time and put them back onto the needle. Because we have quite a bit of knitting to get to the other side, we discussed in the morning class that this was enough to sort of take up until we get to October. So you're welcome to contact me at info@aroundthetableyarns.com or to call the shop at 216-230-9224 if you're struggling with this. If you leave a message on our voicemail, I get it as an email. If you want to leave an email or if you have a question you want to leave an email, they both get to me. And but I think we will resume. We will skip the session that was scheduled for September, and we will resume Sweater Club in October to give everybody a chance to get to the point where they can do their sleeves. So the next Sweater Club will be in October so that we can do our sleeves together. Um, it's going quite quickly, I think, even given a 2-month sort of uh, work break. If anybody has any questions, or if you're struggling with sizing your sleeve, or if you're struggling with some aspect of it, please do reach out and let me know. I'd love to help you with it. And then we'll meet again in October. The October Sweater Club class date is October the 20th. So we will meet again on October 20th. Ooh, where am I? Sorry, I had to pull my calendar out. And at that point, hopefully, you will have finished the torso of your sweater. One thing they did suggest, if you wanted to, if you finished instead of putting them on a holder, if you bound these off, this makes a nice vest. I hadn't thought about making a sleeveless vest with this pattern, but I actually am kind of intrigued by the idea, and I think I would like a sleeveless vest in this pattern. So that's another option that this pattern, it's like it contains a multitude of different options of what you can make with this pattern, and it really kind of makes me happy to have something that has so many sizes and so many options and so many different shapes to be able to do. And so much ease of modification, that you can make it longer or shorter, that you can make it with the neckline that you want, and then you can make the sleeves fit better. And as always, as we'll find out with the sleeves, you can make the sleeves fit the length that you want by continuing to knit. So I hope everyone is enjoying Sweater Club. I know there's a lot of, it feels like there's a lot of numbers, but I hope we've gone through them and made them clearer for you. And there I am at the last one. So there we go. So all my stitches back on, and I'm ready to start the back again. And then I'll cast on the fronts and I'll be ready to get to the other side. Any questions tonight? Nope. Thank you all for joining. We'll be back again for Sweater Club on October 20th, 2025. And then the video will be available on our website and our YouTube channel. Thanks so much for joining us.